All right. It is time to mock. Our mock is going to be up tomorrow morning.
Let me just put it this way, George. Think to yourself of what your favorite mock is, and then realize that you're about to level up.
This is the mock your previous mock told you not to worry about. It's fantastic. We had a ton of fun doing this. Remember, this is how we would draft if we were drafting for all 32 teams. So there's some uniqueness here. It's not trying to predict what teams will take, but it led to some really interesting conversations. You can read the full thing at pff.com. What we're going to do here is we're going to go pick by pick. I'm going to read 5 picks at a time. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about the ones that were in those groups that were kind of the most hotly debated or we thought were the most interesting. And we'll go through it that way. Are you ready?
I'm ready, George.
Okay. I will preface this first 5 by saying we call this the schmock because of what happens at number 2, the art schmock. Matt Rule and the Carolina Panthers make a big move. So at 1, Jacksonville takes Trevor Lawrence. At 2, we have Carolina trading up with the New York Jets and selecting Zach Wilson. At number 3, we have a big trade again. Houston trades with Miami. They get their pick back. So they send Deshaun Watson to Miami. They recoup number 3, number 18. They get Xavier Howard, and they get Tua Tagovailoa. Remember that one because that comes up later. Houston then selects Justin Fields. So quarterback. Atlanta at number 4 takes Jamar Chase, creates potentially the greatest trio of wide receivers that we have in the NFL with Julio, Ridley, and Chase. And then at number 5, Cincinnati doesn't have to be mad at us because Chase is gone. So they take Penei Sewell. Your biggest reaction to these first 5?
Well, there's a number of teams that could trade up with 2 or 3. So the fact that we picked Carolina and we picked Houston, I think sort of shows sort of where our heads are at. Carolina, I think if you are Matt Rule, if you are Joe Brady, if you are the new look Panthers, I think you see blood in the water in the NFC South, despite the fact that somebody in your division just literally won the Super Bowl. Atlanta hasn't been, Atlanta's in transition yet again. New Orleans, in theory will be in transition again. And, Tampa Bay, they have an older quarterback. So you can come up, get your quarterback, get him a year with Joe Brady. We wrote this about Herbert. Like there's a chance that you draft Wilson, he plays really well as a rookie. Joe Brady gets a head coaching job as a result, and maybe it's not as good of an outcome as you think. But yeah, that to me that's a swing for the fence there. I like that one a lot. The Sewell one obviously is just sort of looking at the tackle market if you're Cincinnati and looking at what you're going to have to put together if you want to protect Joe Burrow in year 2 after you did such a horrible job of doing it in year 1.
I really struggled with the Sewell pick because the wide receiver core for the Bengals is not great, and I know that we like T. Higgins, his potential. I guess he had some moments last year, and you love Tyler Boyd. Okay, but Tyler Boyd is a really good number 2 or a pretty good number 2. But you need to get more weapons there in Cincinnati. I'll say this about the Zach Wilson thing. I think it's the perfect move for Carolina. And the reason I think it's the perfect move for Carolina is you mentioned both the Falcons and the Bucs. The Falcons are going to give it one last go here. Okay. They've got Arthur Smith. They've got Matt Ryan, got Julio Jones. And the Bucs are, 2-3 years, however many years Tom Brady decides to keep being superhuman. So why would Carolina not right now build for the future? And here's the other thing. You expect the team to get better next year. They have pick 8 this year. That may be the ceiling in terms of how high they can get because you expect their team to improve. Then they can ship Teddy Bridgewater to the Bears and the Bears can continue being the Bears.
Right. Yeah, I think the thing with the Bengals is just, to get starting, the bet on getting starting caliber left tackle play in free agency is just so much worse than in the current wide receiver crop. If you lose out on Chase, you can still go Waddle or Smith, as we're going to talk about. But, you can there's some veteran guys that I think can mix in there at the 3rd spot behind Higgins and Boyd.
I have to say this too. I feel really bad for Justin Fields. Justin Fields did nothing to deserve going to Houston. And this is not us hating on Justin Fields. We both were 100% Justin Fields is the number 3 guy. No conversation about the other 2. Okay. Number 6, Philadelphia Eagles select Devontae Smith. Detroit Lions at 7 take Jalen Waddle. The Jets, who moved back from 2 to 8, take Kyle Pitts, tight end Florida. At number 9, the Broncos go quarterback and take Trey Lance from North Dakota State. And then Dallas at 10 takes cornerback number 1, Caleb Farley. Were you, looking back at these 6, which was the one that you think we might be most close to changing if we were to do this again?
Well, obviously the Pitts selection comes with the idea that they're either keeping Darnold or they're getting Bridgewater back. Remember, the Jets had Bridgewater in Darnold's first year. But that one is interesting. It's they don't have good wide receivers in New York. I mean, Jamison Crowder was the best they had. Perriman, Mims is a draft pick. So those two, Pitts kind of comes in there into an offense that, needs wide receiver play, but the top 3 are plucked away. So you get him in there. He's a unique talent. If he doesn't perform, and we've seen that happen before, top 10 tight ends are, worse than a coin flip, then the choice to forego one of the top quarterbacks in favor of Darnold or Bridgewater or something like that is going to blow up in the Jets' face.
Yeah. Here's the one that, looking back on this, I was like, maybe we do this differently. Should the Eagles, if Lance and Jones are there, not consider taking one of them? I mean, they're in a situation where you want to see what Jalen Hurts has, but you also don't want to miss out on having the 6th overall pick. Now, they're such a bad team that there's a chance they're picking top 5 again next year, so I think that plays into the calculus. And Devonta Smith is so good and offers them a really great complement to what they have with Jalen Reagor. So I'm at peace with it. But part of me wonders, like, would you just take Trey Lance and give he and Jalen Hurts like every other series and just see who wins? I mean, the Eagles are in such a shitty position here that you're almost like willing to take, you take one quarterback here and you're willing next year, if you have a top 5 pick, to take another one.
Well, in my first, in my draft, we both kind of did these independently, came together on a consensus. I had the Eagles moving up to 3. In hindsight, I think that was actually kind of stupid because, the Eagles need a lot of players.
Yes.
They're not a good enough football team. They're kind of like the Jets were in 2018 when they moved from 6 to 3 to take Darnold. And it's like, you're just setting that guy up to fail. I think you're doing the same thing if you take Lance there too, because for one, Lance is not like a polished, like Lance is going to take some work. Right. And that's fine. Like if you believe Hurts is like sort of the backup of the future, quote unquote, that's fine. But why don't you just take a stab at the idea that he's the starter of the present, knowing that, you went wide receiver in round 1 last year, going wide receiver in round 1 again. You're sort of building that team up. And if you absolutely flame out, 6 is probably like the upper bound of where you're going to pick next year.
A couple other things on these picks. I think they're really interesting. Denver, everyone says, oh, look, they want to give Drew Lock another shot. Go pick up the quarterback annual. Take a look at Drew Lock. There's no reason to give Drew Lock another shot. Like, if you want him to compete, that's fine, but you cannot go away from picking a quarterback or trading for a quarterback because you think Drew Lock has something in him that you haven't seen yet. That's just ridiculous. And if he proves you wrong, great, you're set, you're fine. But
Drew Lock is fan fiction at this point.
But I do want to take a second and talk about the Dallas Cowboys here. What we came into a couple of times is, look, if we're the GM for a team, we are not going to shy away from taking a position that we drafted highly last year and maybe didn't work out again this year. And so when you look at Caleb Farley, you go, oh, they just took Trayvon Diggs and like he was okay. He was actually their highest rated corner last year. He didn't eclipse 65. They need corners. You need corners. Look at the Bucks. Look at the Bucks.
Corner's a depth position. Corner's a depth position, and it doesn't always pay. Like if you took Jeffrey Okudah last year, Jeff Gladney last year, Christian Fulton was okay, I think. But then if you took Trayvon Diggs, like that pick wasn't. Those picks weren't to light the league on fire in year 1. Those picks were to do what Tampa did in Carlton Davis's year 3, right? To sort of be like, oh, this is why we attacked the secondary 3 drafts ago. with relentless abandon, because now we have a bunch of guys that are rounding into form. If you take a cornerback in year one in the draft and expect him to be everything to you, you failed. And I think that the same thing's true here with Farley, who I think is the best cornerback prospect and has been for a calendar year. But he's going to be a part of a thing in Dallas. He's not, if you put it on his shoulders, I think that's not a good way to think about it.
My favorite set of 5 picks is 11 through 15. Okay. Because I was in the shower this morning and I was thinking about our podcast and I was thinking about what,
as one does.
Yes, as one does. And I was thinking about what pick do I regret most? And the only thing I regret was the Niners not making a move for either Deshaun Watson or Zach Wilson. But we can't jinx it, Eric. We cannot jinx it.
Yeah.
We cannot put that in this mock or any other mock. The Niners are staying pat until, here we go. The New York Giants at 11 take edge defender numero uno from Michigan, Kwity Paye. And at 12, the Niners, they're on the clock. The Washington football team gives them a call and trades up with the Niners to select Mac Jones. The Niners are happy to stick with Jimmy G for now. At number 13, the Los Angeles Chargers take offensive tackle Rashawn Slater. At 14, your Minnesota Vikings solidify the interior of their defense, which they so desperately need.
The next John Randall.
With Christian Barmore. And at number 15, perhaps our favorite move, Houston trades Tua Tagovailoa, who they picked up earlier in the round, to New England for New England's pick at 15. And Houston then picks Asante Samuel Jr. Houston actually, despite the fact that we can't really stand what they're doing as an organization, is doing a really nice job in our mock draft. At least that was my takeaway here. What was the biggest, what was your favorite part of this 11 through 15?
Well, the 201 was clear. I mean, The Barmore thing is interesting. Obviously, we wrote the article about, how valuable interior defenders are that have value beyond just stopping the run, even if they can't get pushed. Now, Barmore's sort of above and beyond expectation at his position right now. The interior players are getting paid a ton now. That snatching a guy who can be elite at pick 13 or 14 is actually a fairly good value for the dollar. So that one, that would not have been in our mock last year. That's in our mock now. But yeah, to me, it's the Tua, trading back in. In essence, you get 5 quarterbacks in round one. Here, New England gets a guy that I think will be, fairly good if you surround him with some talent and they have the cap space to do so. There really isn't anybody for a New England team at 15 that's going to change the direction of their franchise other than Tua Tagovailoa.
Now, here's the sneaky thing about what Houston has done. They've gotten Justin Fields, but they've also now started to create kind of a sneaky good, defensive secondary on the defensive side, where they picked up in our trade, they picked up Xavier Howard and now have Asante Samuel Jr. So, they could turn this around rather quickly if Justin Fields is anything close to what Deshaun Watson was for them. And, they don't deserve it, but they're getting it here. I'll also say that for the Washington football team, I think this is a really interesting choice in Mac Jones, that they could try and run it back with Alex Smith, whether he wants to play or not. But I really like getting a quarterback who can throw the ball accurately, especially over the middle of the field, which is what he did at Alabama. Given that they've got Terry McLaurin there, I think you've got to give Terry someone and then go maybe out in free agency and sign another wide receiver. And all of a sudden, if Mac Jones comes in and plays anything around average quarterback play, you're going to be a pretty darn good football team. And maybe it turns out that he, continues to progress and it's not just all the Alabama offense. They could be really good. Like, they could win the NFC East if Mac Jones is decent.
Yeah.
All right.
That's the NFC East, of course, being what it is. But yeah, absolutely. And that's an interesting one where I think, when I'm sort of looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, that's really Washington's only recourse. It kind of reminds me of Kirk Cousins. Now, the interesting thing is Cousins went 4th round in 2012. You're having to trade up to get Jones with pick 12 here. But if the outcomes are the same, the price is pretty low for the quarterback like that. So, yeah.
Going to pick number 16, the Arizona Cardinals at 16 take Patrick Surtain Jr., replacing Patrick Peterson, who's been so fantastic for them for so long. At 17, the Raiders go Rashad Bateman, who tweeted out that he ran sub 4.4, which was pretty impressive.
You love to see it.
At 18, Houston via Miami takes Azeez Ojulari, edge defender from Georgia. At 19, the Niners, who just moved back from 12, take J.C. Horn, cornerback. Was working out with Jalen Ramsey this past weekend, and a guy that Richard Sherman has talked about really liking. So they maybe get the replacement for Sherman there. And then at 20, the Bears take Christian Darrisaw, offensive tackle, who could have easily been taken ahead of Rashawn Slater. He projected even slightly better from a pressure rate allowed standpoint than Rashawn Slater. What was your favorite pick here?
I like the Horn pick. The Bateman pick is also great. It's again an example of a team taking a guy at a position 1 year and not shying away another year, especially a position like wide receiver where we know you need depth there. They just got rid of Tyrell Williams, who they signed to a big deal, who did not work out. Horn is another one too. Like the Niners need cornerback play. We wish they would have gone and gotten it during last year's draft, but in the first rounds or so. But they didn't, and that that's what happens. But I like that pick a lot. He's one that always pops up in my projections, our projections.
I really like the Raiders going and getting Bateman. If you're going to try and compete in that division with the Chargers,
you might have the worst quarterback eventually.
Right. With the Chargers and Herbert and that offense looking on the come up, and then the Broncos, potentially they could make a move at quarterback. And then of course you have the Chiefs. You go, well, what do I need? I need an explosive offense. I think if you're going to go in on Derek Carr, you've got to give him weapons. And Bateman is, if you miss on Ruggs, or if Ruggs develops, Bateman figures to help either way, right? Because Ruggs can be that speed element. And Bateman obviously is no slouch himself. I really like that move for the Raiders. Okay. 21, the Indianapolis Colts take Trayvon Mooring, safety. Tennessee at 22 takes Gregory Rousseau from Miami. 23, the Jets get a receiver for Sam Darnold, another receiver. So they go Kyle Pitts and then Rondale Moore. And then at 24, the Pittsburgh Steelers take offensive weapon Kadarius Toney, Florida. And then the Jags, who have this pick from the Seahawks for Jamal Adams, take offensive tackle USC Elijah Vera Tucker. Favorite pick here?
I like the Rondale Moore pick. I think that gives whomever is playing quarterback for the Jets a fighting chance. The Rousseau pick is more of a need than anything, but he's also a very good athlete. Sat out this year though. Is one where you're making a projection. Indianapolis, Trayvon Mooring is is an Indianapolis pick. So all of these sort of make sense. My favorite, I think, is Rondale Moore. Give the quarterback that you never really gave a fighting chance. Give him a fighting chance.
You know what my favorite pick is. It's obviously Kadarius Toney, and I am a sucker for athleticism. Toney can score from anywhere, but it should be noted he did really well on the few deep targets that he did get. He's still really raw, but I love what this does either for extending Ben Roethlisberger's career or for whoever the next quarterback is there. Because you look at his heat maps that you can see in the PFF draft guide, and Toney just lights up the middle of the field. And that is where Big Ben is going to be needing to throw the ball because he threw it in an average of 2.2 seconds last season. So I think it fits really well for extending Ben Roethlisberger's career and making the Steelers offense kind of, electric, which is what it could be if Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool continue to improve. So I really like that for the Pittsburgh Steelers, regardless of who the quarterback is. Okay. The last set here, we're going to go 26 through 32. The Cleveland Browns, Micah Parsons, linebacker / edge rusher. He's a freak. The Baltimore Ravens at 27 take offensive tackle Tevin Jenkins. At 28, New Orleans. This is kind of a surprise for a lot of people, but it might be one of my favorite picks. Terrence Marshall Jr., wide receiver, LSU. Green Bay Packers, receiver? No. They're going defense. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. At number 30, the Buffalo Bills take Jason Away in a manger. 31, the Kansas City Chiefs take wide receiver Elijah Moore. And 32, the Tampa Bay Bucks make a strength even stronger with Ardarius Washington, safety / slot defender from TCU. Your Chiefs going wide receiver.
I think you have to. I mean, at the tackle, there's a ton of tackle, options later on. So, I think you make what is kind of, sneakily a strength, another strength here. But, they were followed by the fact that, when it mattered most in the Super Bowl last year, they struggled, in the sort of secondary, tertiary wide receiver position, with Sammy Watkins being slowed and Mecole Hardman sort of not having quite emerged from, his sort of gadget position. They need a wide receiver to complement Tyreek Hill, and they've needed one for a while. And to me, that's how you do it. And there's also a sneaky thing here, George, which is when you have a superstar quarterback, I think you have to get out ahead of what Russell Wilson's complaining about what Deshaun Watson's complaining about. Like, you're in it for the long haul with Mahomes, but I think you have to continue to make him happy.
I couldn't decide what my favorite picks in this section were. So I have two, and they tie. The New Orleans Saints taking Terrence Marshall Jr., who is going to suffer from even more than what Justin Jefferson suffered from. He played in the slot a ton. That was obviously a question mark for Justin Jefferson, but he also dealt with the bad side of the LSU team, right? And Justin Jefferson had that incredible season with Joe Burrow. Terrence Marshall gets nowhere near that opportunity. 150 plus pass rating on throws, 10 plus yards downfield, 6'3". Dude is an absolute freak. And you think about Jameis Winston, who wants to push the ball downfield. I think Marshall will be able to play in the slot and a little bit out wide. And you've got obviously Michael Thomas there already. So I think this gives Jameis Winston, Sean Payton a chance to be electric. And then Ardarius Washington, slot defender / safety from TCU. The dude's like 5'8", but he's an absolute maniac. Incredible instincts. I loved what Michael Renner wrote about him in the draft guide. Said, like, if he were 6 feet tall, he'd be a top 10 pick. Gives a little honey badger vibe, which you love. And if you look at what the Tampa Bay Bucks have done, they have invested in receivers and defensive backs. It has paid off for them. They continue to do that. Jason Licht continuing to be the best drafter, as Timo Riske wrote on PFF.com last week. That's our mock. You can go check it out on PFF.com. You can go hate on it on Twitter or in the comment section. We enjoy it. Anything that you have, throw it our way. And we'll have version 2 in maybe a month or so before the draft.